Hello, and welcome to this month's book club. It's been a few weeks since our last one. Last month we talked about Hofstadter, and this month I read Derren Brown's newest book for the public called Happy, and I wanted to talk about it because it is very interesting. A book titled Happy from Derren Brown, who has changed his persona throughout the years that he's been performing, and he's shifted to being someone someone else, and it's not a bad thing. It's just the way the public perceives him. For example, uh, for those of you who have followed Derren Brown's career, he has been active on television since the year 2000. His first TV series. I think it was a series, not just a special, but the series was called Mind Control, and you can watch it. Most of it is up on YouTube, or you could buy it. But it's a great magic series. Came out around the same time, a little after David Blaine's first specials, but it really is great magic, and it's great to see Derren Brown doing his type of magic on TV, because most of what he's doing on TV right now would not be called magic. So if you do want to check out those older specials, uh, they're quite fascinating. But it leads us to what he's doing now in this book, Happy, which is quite interesting. But I want to talk how he got to that. So, mind control. The premise was he was a conjurer who studied psychology, and his studies of memory, psychology, hypnosis, NLP suggestion, um, all those fields uh, were interacting in a way that would allow him to influence and direct the minds of people in the public. So he'd be walking around London and shake somebody's hand and automatically put them into a hypnotic state, and then ask them for their watch and their wallet and their phone and their car keys and house keys and all of those things. It made for quite entertaining television. You'd see somebody walking by a phone, and the phone would be ringing. That person would pick it up. Derren Brown would be on the other end, and you wouldn't hear what he was saying to them, but the person would fall asleep at that payphone. And it was just quite an interesting series. I don't believe that we've ever seen anything like that on TV before. I know that um, both David Berglas and David Britlin had been involved in television shows and designing experiences around the mind decades before that. But it was the first time that I think modern audiences, um, had seen something like that. And then afterwards, it evolved to his next series, after Mind Control, Trick of the Mind, and and then it shifted away from magic. Actually, let me look up Derren Brown briefly, just so I can get the order of his TV shows right, because he did so many, and I think it's important to look at the evolution of his shows. So yeah, 2000 Mind Control, 2004 started Trick of the Mind, and in between that, he was doing these one-off specials. For example, his Russian Roulette, where he plays Russian Roulette live in front of television audience. He 2004 he hosted a séance on TV. Um, Messiah, The Gathering, my personal favorite, I think, The Heist, The System. He's done. I mean, Derren Brown must have done, I don't know, 20 shows. The list is pretty large. It's actually quite a large body of work. And then they also have televised his some of his stage shows as well. So I mean, I won't go through the list of all of them, but they there are multiple. But it is very interesting uh, to and there's even some that I've never seen. 3D Magic Spectacular. I've never seen that one. But it is quite interesting to note that for the most part, Darren Brown stopped performing magic on TV, other than his the airings of his live show in about 2006. The last Trick of the Mind season 3, aired in 2006, and then after that, it was Trick or Treat. Darren Brown Investigates. Hero at 30,000 feet, etc., etc. And he was moving more away from performing magic, performing what we would call mentalism, and he was instead focusing on television series that some of them incorporated magic. There were small magic moments in them, but it was mostly around this premise of his character, which is he is a this psychological master manipulator. And now what you're seeing on TV, I mean, if you look at the last two specials, Push to the Edge as well as Sacrifice, um, there's no magic in them whatsoever. You would not, if you watch those, and many people have watched them because that's how he's been introduced to the West, sort of right now in terms of what he's doing on Netflix. You would have you would have no idea that he's really a magician. There's really no indication. I don't think in those programs that he is a magician. There's no magic. Doesn't talk about magic. Uh, you would just you would not know that he went on TV and performing mentalism for many years. Um, it's quite interesting. I remember a few years back. I don't remember exactly what year, but um, Darren Brown's TV shows never really aired in the U.S. on U.S. television. I believe the first crossover, or maybe they made it for US TV, but I believe it was with the Psy network or Psy station. It's like a channel. And they many years ago uh, aired, or I don't know if they produced or if they only aired, but it was Messiah. So that was in the year 2005, where Darren Brown goes to all these different religious organizations and alien abductions, psychic powers, new age, whatever, and it's a whole special revolving around that. And that was the first time I believe they aired one of his TV shows in the U.S. Don't quote me on that though, because it may be incorrect in terms of the date, but I do think I'm not that far off. If it wasn't 2005, then it might have been 2011. Uh, but I could be, you know, I could be wrong about the dates. There could be different shows that I didn't know about that somehow crossed over. And the point is, none of them stuck. Darren Brown, at that time back then, had never made it big in the U.S. Um, I personally believe that it was due to the content that they put. Those weren't. I don't believe those were very good specials compared to some of the other things that he made. Because he's made some really great things, and those I don't consider to be the best. And then you also have the problem or the issue of his accent, which is, he's from the UK, and American television watchers generally don't, are not fond of the British accent. Many people do have a hard time understanding it. Um, and usually when different series are picked up from the UK and remade in the US, they just they don't just buy the series and play it. They remake it. For example, you have Ricky Gervais' The Office that was remade in the US, and many, The Real Hustle was remade in the US as well. Many TV shows that are, and maybe times are changing now with Netflix, sort of changing the game, but for a while, that's what was happening. Um, so, anyways, which leads us to this book, and it's quite interesting actually you when you see the books that Derren Brown has published. He doesn't actually mention um, he doesn't actually mention that he has uh, that he's written magic books before. When you when you when you read, his introduction, or whatever, the bio, it says Derren Brown has also written other books, Confessions of a Conjurer, and Tricks of the Mind, and Happy. Those are the three books that he's listed as writing. There's no mention of Absolute Magic in Happy. There's no mention of any of the other books, and these were real books that he wrote for the magic community. That was just, I think, a choice that he made to not put them in, because this book Happy was written for the public, but the subject of happiness, um, and I guess he had no reason to mention his magic books that he had written, or he didn't want the public to know about them. I mean, there's no point really in the public uh, knowing about those books. So, anyways, it's just something that I found interesting while reading the book, that there was no mention in the bio of his other books on magic. Um, so the whole book, and I don't want to talk too much about the book because really isn't a magic book. So the book's called Happy, and it's basically a history of happiness and the different philosophies in the world, and a large portion of the book is devoted to philosophies as well, and with a look at especially a lot of stoicism, stoic philosophy, uh, and it's quite an interesting book. I personally don't agree with everything that Derren Brown writes. He talks about death. He talks about all sorts of different subjects in the book, and it is interesting to hear Derren Brown's thoughts on different subjects, and it is a fairly well written book. Um, but the book tells us a lot of things that, yeah, I don't think have been in print before, or at least gives us details around it. And it's quite interesting. So, um, near the very beginning of the book, he is talking about the work. I guess they were working on the show Messiah at that time. Although, yeah, I may be incorrect. Maybe it was one of the other faith healer shows, and they had gone to a faith healer, and he was talking about the um, the methodology that these people use to divine odd information to the audience. And if you ever seen these, uh, like, on U.S. television, it's really tacky, but you'll have the I guess they call them televangelists, and they go on the stage and they look out into the audience and they're like, I'm feeling I'm receiving a message. And they usually are from Texas or the South. I'm receiving a message. Is there Mary Sue here? Mary Sue at I think the uh the number's coming in. It's 326 uh Downs Drive, and I see a big beautiful house and it has a red door, and is she here in the audience right now? And there's a woman that stands up and he's like, yes, I have a message for you. And they give these people information, and they pretend to be talking to you know I don't know what they're pretending to be talking to, but they are scamming people. And they have people who, as they're coming in, they have to pre-fill out these cards. What's your address? Do you have a medical condition? And it's basically like they ask you a bunch of questions and you fill out these cards. They take these cards backstage, and the guy on stage has a headset. Usually the headset is hidden, and there's somebody backstage feeding him information, so he's able to receive that information in real time. But it's it's given out as if that person is receiving that information in a spiritual way or whatever. And he talks about being in the audience of one of these shows, and he's there with the TV crew, and it's quite interesting of how the things that they do on stage. And he describes how they went undercover and they're wearing microphones and cameras on stage, and how he gets caught because he's adjusting his tie that has a camera hidden in it. And it is quite funny to read. And then they have to leave there in a hurry. So there's stories like that. um, and there's also a lot of stories about Derren Brown's career, especially his early career. Derren Brown is, he's quite interesting because he really is concentrating on working and just creating. And he has, honestly, if Derren Brown retired right now, I mean, he has an incredible body of work, and it's actually a huge amount of work. Just in terms of what he's done, a lot of different shows. I think they have a different show almost every year that he's either doing on, and a different live show, and then a different television show. And he's done so much over the last 20 years. It's quite remarkable. Pretty much a TV show every year on average. Not even counting the live shows. So it is quite a lot of work. And some of the stories are quite interesting. Derren Brown starting out, um, and the book talks about, um, after he was finished school and all that stuff, he's working, doing magic. He's not making he's he's barely making money doing it. He's literally, the story is crazy. I mean, he's literally on, he's on the welfare, and he's working doing magic, and he's on TV, and he's on the welfare at the same time. It's pretty incredible. And this is when he has his first TV show. This is in the year 2000, and he's doing his series tricks, not tricks of the mind. He's doing mind control, mind control, and he's literally on the welfare, and he's working at different bars and restaurants. And I think he lived in Bristol at the time. I'm not too sure exactly where he lived, but he lived somewhere. But anyways, he's performing, and he is performing magic, and the people at the restaurant are like, "Oh, you're almost as good as that Derren Brown guy we see on TV." And uh and he doesn't know what to say because he's trying to explain to them that he's Derren Brown, and they don't believe him because they're like, why would Derren Brown work at uh work at this restaurant? And it is quite funny, and he talks about all. I mean, he goes into amounts. He's like, yeah, at that time he was charging 300. I guess it was 300 pounds. I don't think the euro was in effect back then, but I think it was 300 pounds that he was charging for a show. And um, actually, I think they still use pounds in England despite the EU. Anyways, the point is, I think it was 300 pounds that he was charging for a show, which is, I mean, for somebody who's performing on TV and has their own TV show, it's really not a lot of money. 300 pounds is sort of what you would expect to pay for, the local, kids magician, the guy who's not that good, the guy who is, like, there's a lot of people doing magic shows for $300, and they'll and there's even guys who do it for less. But Darren Brown at the time, he's charging $300, 300 pounds for a show. And his manager doesn't want him to take these shows anymore because it's not good for his image. And at the time, he realizes, because he's on TV, he has his TV show, he can start charging more money, and his price goes up 10 times higher. So instead of charging 300 pounds for a show, he's now charging 3,000 pounds for a show, which is, quite a big pay increase. 300 pounds is, what is 300 pounds? I mean, 3,000 pounds. 3,000 pounds in US dollars. It's about 4,000 pounds. I mean, 4,000 US dollars, around there. Used to be better, actually. I don't know what's going on with the pound. That is a weird exchange rate. Um, but anyways, the point is, that is more in line what you would expect for somebody who had more of a reputation. They're getting, 3,000, 4,000, $5,000 for a show. It's a lot more reasonable pricing. And but Darren Brown explains in the book. I mean, and he's explaining all of this in the book, and it's just like, I don't think a lot of people would explain this in their lives. But he just does it. Uh, he That first year, that he jacks his price up. I'm guessing that it's the year 2000 or 2001. I'm not too sure exactly when all this took place. He doesn't really specify, but it's during his first TV show, so it has to be, in that ballpark. He's raising his price to 3,000 pounds, and um, uh, he only gets one. He gets a show at that price, but he only gets one show. So he's not really making um, money. Like, he's literally not making enough money to live. And something 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 happens. His show is really clicking with the audience, his TV show, and he's able to renew it. But I think the reason why he was able to do all that stuff, he had a really great manager and a man who still works with him. And actually, I personally don't know Michael Vine, but I know many people who do know Michael Vine. Actually, not many people. I know a few people who know Michael Vine. But Michael Vine is Michael. Okay, sorry. I was expecting a phone call. Michael Vine is he used to be. I'll tell you about Michael Vine. So Michael Vine is Derren Brown's manager, um, and what he did is he gave. I believe it was Michael Vine. It could have been. There was also another manager involved or somebody involved, but I think it was Michael Vine. Anyways, I'm just going to tell the story instead of finicking over the details. If I get something wrong, I get it wrong. Uh, but anyways, Derren Brown's manager gives him a loan. Um, I don't know the amount of the loan. He doesn't specify, but yeah, I'm guessing it's enough to pay his rent for a year. He has enough money to live for, I don't know, I guess a year. So he doesn't have to worry about that. And he is just focusing on the TV shows. And then from the TV, I don't know how much money Derren Brown made on those first TV shows. I have no idea. I really don't know. Um, but I'm assuming Derren Brown was struggling for a few years, even though he was on television, which is so crazy. We see people on TV, we're thinking, oh, they must be rich. They must be, making all this money. They're on TV. They have a TV show. And that's not always the case. For the first few years, Derren Brown is working on TV. He's famous. He has no money. He literally has no money. I guess and as soon as he starts making money, I'm sure he's paying off that loan to his manager. But that is, I guess, the manager, Michael Vine, who I assume gave him the loan, really believed in him, and it worked out. It was just quite an incredible gesture, really. And again, I don't know how much money Derren Brown made on those live shows. I mean, on those early TV shows. Um, when you're doing TV work, it's kind of unpredictable. No one in the industry really talks about the money that they're paid, and a lot of people are lying about the money that they're paid. You can either make quite a bit of money or you can make almost no money. And I can tell you that from experience. There have been TV things that I've done that I've made no money off of. There are TV things that I've done that I've made very little money off of. And there's other TV things that I've done that I've been very well paid for. So, but you could not tell by looking at them who paid me well and who didn't. And it's just it's just such a such a weird industry, and there's just so many moving parts that you know just don't just just for yourself when you're seeing a magician on TV, don't assume that they're either don't assume that they're rich, because it may not be that they're rich. It may be that they have no money at all. um, so that is quite interesting that Darren Brown would be so open about that. And a quick word about Michael Vine. Uh, and I've heard about Michael Vine for a few years. One of the guys that I know very well from Toronto, he's not from Toronto, but he lives here now. His name is Mark Lewis. That's sort of a fake name. His real name is Ron McLeod. and he is he's a character. He's from, I believe he's originally from Ireland, but he's lived in London. He's lived all over the UK, and he is a Svengali pitchman. Um, he is one of the guys. He is the guy who wrote the script. For those of you guys who know what a Svengali deck is, uh, Mark Lewis, Ron McLeod is the guy who literally wrote the script that every single pitchman working around the world, working around the UK, around North America, is using. Ron McLeod wrote that script. He's an older guy right now. If you want, actually, I do have an interview with him on Before Magic. You can find it, Mark Lewis. There's a whole, it's like an hour interview that I do talking with him. He's a very knowledgeable guy, um, very smart guy, and I mean, I could talk about him for a long time. He's also quite a character. Uh, he will not he will not deny that he is a character. Um, but Mark Lewis also worked with Michael Vine, and he has tons of stories about Michael Vine. Michael Vine used to work for Mark Lewis, uh, selling decks for him, pitching Svengali decks at I guess festivals and parks and stuff. And I don't know where they were. Maybe they were in Blackpool. They probably traveled around together. I don't know all the details, but Mark Lewis, has told me a lot of stories, and it's actually very interesting. So Michael Vine sort of has this background in magic. Uh, he's not just like a management guy. I don't know how knowledgeable he is about magic. I don't know him personally, but it is quite interesting that you have all these people in the background that like you just have a footnote about them in the book, but there's like they're actual real people, and there's people that know them. This is real. Um, there's stories behind it. Uh, so what did I want to say about Michael Vine? Um, yes, Michael Vine. So one of the stories that is quite funny, and I don't want to name the guy because it might be insulting to him, but apparently this was in the late 90s, right before the year 2000, right before Derren Brown had his first special. Michael Vine was looking around for a young, talented mentalist to do a TV show with. And I don't know if he had already pitched the show or pitched the character. I don't know if he had the show lined up. I'm not too sure what the circumstances are. I'm actually quite curious, and I'll probably the next time I see Darren Brown, I'm actually very curious. But next time I see Darren Brown, I have so many things that I would like to talk to him about. Uh, that I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I can get to it. But so, anyways, Michael Vine is looking for a young mentalist, somebody talented to work on a TV show on, and one of the guys that he is talking to is this mentalist from Toronto, uh, and I don't want to name him. I don't want to name him because I might get in trouble. But let's just say I'm very happy that Darren Brown uh, got the opportunity instead of this mentalist that I know. The mentalist that I know and that I'm referring to, I don't want to name him. Um, he is not that great. He really is not that great of a performer. He doesn't really have. Uh, he's really nothing compared to Darren Brown. And when you see Derren Brown and the success that he's made, and just the way that he's evolved and morphed throughout the years, you really see that it was like lightning struck. Like it was just a spark of genius getting Derren Brown on TV doing those series, and it just has led to so many incredible things. Um, so I guess a large part of that is Michael Vine, and it's quite interesting. Darren Brown talks about, not being on TV, and he just loved magic. He loved performing magic, and we sort of have this hierarchy of needs. We have a hierarchy of needs, and there's stuff that we are all looking for. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how poor you are. We want we want to experience love. We want to experience fulfillment. We want to be loved. We want to be able to give love. We want to be able to be engaged in things that are challenging us, things that we're succeeding in. um, you know, they've done studies where they sit somebody down, and if they're on a video game, and if they design it too easy, the people get bored and they start hating the experience. And if they make it too hard at the same time, equally the people are frustrated. They don't want to play the game. So you know, if you play a game like Half-Life Two, and I think Half-Life 2 Episode 2, this is a very specific reference, but if you play that game with the commentary on, they really talk about their playtesting and how they created the game and the AI in the game to respond to the player, so that the game gave them breaks, but there were different like waves of emotions and stress, and there were periods where they were resting, and there were other periods where it was difficult and stressful, but it was always, moving you through that experience. And that's sort of what we need in life in general. We need challenges, we need long-term projects, we need goals that we're aiming for. And this doesn't matter. I mean, you could be rich, you could have like, a you could have a $20 million mansion with a giant pool and a tennis court and a helicopter, and you can be bored. You can hate your life. There are many celebrities who are totally miserable. There are many billionaires that are totally miserable, um, because they're dealing with everything that we all deal with. But and Darren Brown talks a little bit about that in the book. The whole book is about happiness. Um, but before that, we have needs that uh, can really screw up um, those pursuits, those things that really fulfill us as human beings, those things that really matter to us as human beings, and those are needs that are more primal and basic. For example, we need food, we need water, we need air. We Air is probably our most basic need. If you don't have air, okay. If you don't have air, you're going to be in. It'll be very stressful. You need air. If you don't have food, if you don't have water, if you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't have money, if you don't have basic money to live, if you can't, you know, if you can't pay your rent, if you can't pay your bills, it's very hard to pursue those higher those higher level goals, because you're not even at a place where you can um, where you can have your basic needs fulfilled. And the book talks about all this stuff. It is quite fascinating. But to bring back to Darren Brown, he's talking about when he was young and he wasn't making money, he wasn't famous, um, none of that. He was just performing magic, and he loved it. He loved performing magic every day. Probably his only concern was the only thing that really bothered him was that he was totally broke. And that is something that can affect you even if you're doing what you love every day. Let's say you love magic and you're working on magic every day, and you're performing every day. you can love aspects of your life, and then there's different levels of problems. Oh yeah, oh, I'm late on rent. Like, oh, I can't pay this month's bill, or um you know it can become a problem. So even though you are successful in some areas and you are fulfilled in some areas, it doesn't mean that it's going to be all around the board fulfillment. It's quite it's quite it's quite interesting to hear somebody who's so passionate talk about this, reality, because I think a lot of people present their lives, especially with social media and the technology that we have these days. There's like such a disconnect from reality. People are showing this idealized version, and you see very little reality. I mean, we have these devices, and we have cameras, we have whatever, we can write anything we want, um, and we can share it, but people aren't sharing their true experiences of life. For the most part, they're creating versions of reality. They're creating a skewed filter to show the reality, and it is quite damaging for us for us to see this on a daily basis, because uh, our lives are not. I mean, my life, and I think everyone else's, in great adventure and great, um, just great thrills. But it's not every minute of every day. Um, but these devices and this technology creates this false digital world projection that is constantly uh, being absorbed by us. We're seeing it, we're hearing it, and it's just fake. And then we have a skewed vision of reality because we're comparing our primary experience, our the way that we are, experiencing life through our own bodies, and we're we're social creatures. We're constantly comparing ourselves with these fake projections that we're seeing, and um, all of this leads people to depression, to leading to feeling like, oh, just all sorts of uh, feelings of inferiority and and sadness. And it is quite fascinating. Derren Brown, in the book, he gives one of the thought experiments. I forget which philosopher it was, but he was saying, and this is the thought experiment, and he's giving the surrounding information about it. He says, imagine, if you will, uh, if everyone in the world disappeared except for you. The world stays the same. All the cars are here. All the buildings are here. All the technology, all the everything is here. Just the people are gone. You're the only person left. You can walk down to the most richest part in town. You can go into a mansion. You can use their swimming pool every day. You can drive a Corvette. You can drive a Lamborghini. Oh, there's a Hummer there. Let me grab that Hummer. You can literally do whatever you want. Um, how much would those things fulfill you when there's nobody else there? Would you go and buy? Nobody is looking at you. Would you go and dress a certain way? Would you go and buy? I mean, you don't have to buy anything. Would you go out and seek a certain brand of clothing because it's popular, or would you just wear whatever is comfortable? Would you drive? Would you go seek out that $250,000 car, or would you just drive whatever car is nearest to you? Would you just drive a random? a random car that's like $10,000 that's sitting on the side of the street, and would you just jump into it, or would you be obsessed and thinking, oh, I don't, I want to drive something nice, or would you go live in the most expensive part of town? Would you go into the most secluded, richest, mansion and all that stuff, or would you just live close to a the nearest source of food? Would you just camp out beside the nearest supermarket so that you could just get whatever you want every day in like a 5-minute walk? Or would you rather drive like half an hour and live in this upscale, villa that, sort of needs a lot of maintenance, and you would need to clean the pool, and you would need to cut the grass and do everything by yourself? Would you do all that stuff? And it's quite an interesting experiment. Just a thought experiment, like seeing, just imagining for ourselves and giving us a different perspective of life, and how we compare each other uh, to ourselves. And there is also another uh, point that is made in the book, which I never really considered, but I mean, I knew it was true. Um, for example, I'll perform for very wealthy people sometimes, like incredibly wealthy, uh, millionaires, and beyond that, even billionaires. I've performed for quite a few billionaires in my life. No joke. And most people who have quite a bit of money don't really talk about money. Um, but I have been at events where uh, people are talking, and somebody's mentioning that they just bought, oh yeah, I just bought another lake house. It is $5 million, and it's on this side of the lake. And oh, I just bought, yeah, I only fly in my private jet if I can. I only fly in my private jet if I can, because there's too many problems with the airlines and all this stuff. And you're hearing these conversations, and if you go on Google and you look up how much some of these luxuries are, and no joke, the one of these conversations that I heard was crazy. They were talking about one of the airliners. I think it was like Air Dubai, or like one of these airliners going to one of these rich Middle Eastern companies, and they were talking about a flight. I kid you not, this is a flight that, and I misheard at first. I misheard. They were I misheard. I thought they said $2,000. They're talking about how you have your own private cabin, and there's a bed in it, and you can sleep in the flight. And I'm listening to that, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, $2,000 for the flight. If I'm traveling all around the world, I might pay $2,000 for a really comfortable flight. And then they they correct me, and they're like, "Oh, it's not $2,000. It's $20,000 for a flight. $20,000 for a flight. 20,000 US dollars for a flight." Um, when you think about how much money that is, there are people in the United States. There are people all over the world, but we're talking about the United States. There are people who don't earn $20,000 in a year. I mean, $20,000, many people earn more than that in a year, but it's not an insignificant amount of money. This is not the amount of money that most people would spend on an experience that lasts a few hours going from one country to another. But there are other people who, you know, who are paying this amount, and it is crazy to think about when you think about the money, but it's just because of where I'm at. I mean, I will be honest. I have never taken a $20,000 flight, and I don't think I ever will. I mean that is a ridiculous amount of money to pay for a flight. But when you put it in another way, and when you do consider that there are people who are literally making millions of dollars a year, and they literally don't know where to put their money. They have so much money that they don't know what to do with it, and it is quite fascinating uh, to hear about these things. $20,000 for a flight. It's a lot of money. It is. Um, but imagine if you have so much money that you don't know what to do with it. You're going to restaurants and it's costing you. Yeah, this is another thing I heard. Uh, Somebody talking about how it costs them. It, how much does it cost them? I forget the exact amount, but I think it was around $25,000 a month that they were spending going to restaurants. They were going to world class restaurants, spending around $25,000 a month on food. These are things that I've heard with my own ears, like literally. And these are not people who are making this up. They have that much money, and and they're talking about it. It's crazy to me. And does it bother me? Uh, do I feel do Not does it bother me? That's the wrong question. Do I feel like I'm in competition with them? Am I personally like, oh, $25,000 per month on food? I can only afford $10,000 a month on food. Am I making that comparison in my head? No, I'm not spending $10,000 a month on food. You know, so we I mean, I probably spend a few $100s a month on food. I don't know the exact amount, but I mean, it's not that expensive to feed myself. I don't very often go to restaurants, especially I mean, I've spent money at restaurants. I think the most I've spent at a restaurant was like, I don't know, around $200, which is quite a lot of money for me to spend at a restaurant. Those are like very rare and special occasions. I could not imagine, doing that every single day, every meal, uh, and but so are we comparing ourselves? Am I jealous that somebody only flies on private jets? No. Am I jealous that some billionaire bought a new private jet? No, I'm not jealous. Am I jealous that some guy, you know, go in the real estate news? I guarantee you, somebody today, right now, bought a house that's like $20 million. I could look it up. Somebody did it. I don't know who it is. Somebody bought a house that's $20 million. Does it bother me? No, I don't care. I'm not even at that level. I can't even, I can't make that comparison between myself and them because we're on totally different sides of, life. We're on different parts of the spectrum. And this is what Darren Brown talks about. One of these philosophers that he references in the book talks about how we only compare ourselves with people. Well, we compare ourselves with a lot of people, but we generally compare ourselves with people who are in our bubble, in our circle. For example, people are jealous of, you know, they're not jealous of a billionaire buying another private jet or an island. Am I jealous that David Copperfield has an island? No, I've never in my life thought about buying an island. See, I've never seriously considered it. I knew that it was totally out of my means. So am I jealous? No, but um, you know, uh, could I be jealous that Could I be jealous that another magician gets a show on Netflix, or uh, another magician gets a show that I was supposed to perform? You know, yeah, I would be jealous. Am I jealous that David Copperfield is probably making around $300,000 a night in Las Vegas? No, I'm not jealous. But if somebody in my city comes and takes one of my shows and it's a few $1,000s, yeah, I'll be jealous. you know, we are comparing people that are at our level. We're constantly comparing ourselves with people that are on our level, and we sort of stay within our lanes. And a lot of what Darren Brown's book is about is um, living your life with perspective, trying to live with perspective. And it is it is it's something that we all have to do. I think it's something that we should all try to do. Just live with more perspective, not get bothered by different things. I mean, he talks about he and it's not only he's not only talking about happiness, he's talking about the different emotions that sort of interfere with our happiness: anger, jealousy, anything. Um, like, how many times in life have you felt a really deep, intense emotion in a moment? And then it's nothing to you. There have been things that have really angered me, really angered me, and I've been angry about. And then it's like you give it some time and you're okay. Like, it doesn't bother you as much. Uh, they have this thing in hockey where if people are fighting, they give them like a timeout. Like, they literally take the players that are fighting and they put them on a timeout. So they're on a timeout for a few minutes. And when they come back to the game, they've had time to calm down, because when they're in that moment and they're having that rage, all they want to do is fight and kill. That's how many road rage incidents happen. And it's so tragic. There was a story. I couldn't believe this. I mean, this was ridiculous. There was a story about this was in the news. Two people driving. I believe it was on a highway or some sort of road, and both of the lanes were merging into one lane. When you have two lanes and they're turning into one lane, and there were these two cars, and they were both trying to get ahead of each other for what they're on the same road. They're trying to get ahead of each other. You know, Stupid, right? One of the drivers, has a gun, and they're so angry that this other driver won't let them go. They pull out their gun and they shoot at the other car. I don't know if they were aiming for the driver, it doesn't really matter. The other driver received the bullet right in their head. The car swerved off the road, crashed into a tree. Person is dead. And you think about it. I mean, you think about that. That is a murderous road rage incident, and this is not, sounds crazy. It's not an isolated incident. There's lots of incidents where you'll have bikers and a car, and what something happens. The bike touches the side of the car gets scratched, whatever. And the driver in the car will get so angry, they'll just get so angry, they'll just turn the steering wheel, crush the person on the bike, run them over. They're like on a rage. They're like, and they kill the person. They kill the person. It's like my what why, and and it's all about like these emotions that take us away from ourselves, and they put us in this weird place, like we're being hijacked by these emotions that aren't even beneficial for us. We let them consume us. We let anger consume us. We let jealousy consume us. We let all uh, these these things just hijack us, and it's none of it is for our benefit. Anyways, Derren Brown talks about a lot of the stuff. He talks about death. He talks about the afterlife, his belief, his worldview. I don't agree with everything he says. I personally have a different world view than him. Um, but I do find it very interesting to hear his thoughts on different matters. I think he's a very smart guy. I think uh, he's a very good guy. And to to be where he is in his career, it's quite unique. And that's where I started this off, and this is where I'm going to finish it. He started off wanting to, not wanting to. He started off performing something, but it's led into this character and this persona that has um, that is respected, so that he can write these different books and work on these other projects. If David Copperfield could not write a book on happiness, David Copperfield would not be considered to have that background in psychology. Derren Brown, David Copperfield could not write a book on psychology. David Blaine, same thing. He could not write a serious book on psychology and be taken seriously for it. I mean, he could write a good book, I'm sure, but he wouldn't be taken seriously because Derren Brown is so focused in his performances and his body of work on the human mind. It allows him to share different philosophies and systems and actually be taken seriously and be heard. And it's quite interesting. That's one of the side benefits of magic. Whatever it is that you branch off in and whatever your persona is, you can gain an audience which respects your thoughts, and you can actually um, share your ideas to help people. I think the book Happy is an incredibly helpful book for people in different times of their life. I've personally recommended it to a friend of mine. I've actually recommended it to two people so far. And these are two friends of mine who are both dealing with issues in their own life. And, they're not as happy as they want to be. And I recommended the book because I've been reading it. I've finished it just recently, but I've been reading it and I'm like, wow, some of these ideas could be very beneficial to people. And I just think it's incredible that Derren Brown is able to do that. Starting off by performing magic tricks and getting to a place where he can help impact lives. It really is incredible. So please, if you do get a chance, read the book. It is quite a good book. Very happy that he wrote it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I will catch you in the next one. We will also be doing a studies in magic group. Um, Hopefully, I don't know, today, maybe tomorrow, but I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for watching, as always. And no announcements at this time. Just has been a busy, crazy month, but we'll chat soon. Read the book; it's good. Um, and I got a bunch of other books. I just picked up a bunch of other books. I think I'm going to continue in this vein for a while. In this vein, I've only done one sort of recent book, um, but I've just been in a place where I read a lot of old magic books. I read books all over the place, but I've just been reading a lot of current books that have been published in magic. I'm reading right now Pendulette's book, Presto: How I Made £100 Disappear, um, and so I don't know what we're going to be discussing in the book club, but I have a feeling I'm going to be talking about what's current in my mind, fresh, and I just feel invigorated to read some of these things right now. Some of these current titles. I don't know why, um, but look forward to sharing them with you in the coming weeks. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a nice